Hi everyone, I'm Sarah and this is Sarah's Craft Corner. If you're new here, thank you for watching. Please subscribe. If you're returning, thank you so much for your support and I hope you enjoyed this video. So today I'm going to be showing you how to do a chunky turban headband. I figured since it's 2020 that we could do a nice little play and do a vintage inspired pattern based on the turban, which was very popular in the 1920s. So this pattern uses a super chunky yarn and a bigger needle, so it works up very quickly. With the super chunky yarn, it's nice and thick, super warm for winter, and it's not a hat, so it's not going to ruin your hair. I like to wear it because I have curly hair, and if I wear a hat, it just gets ruined. So let's get right into the pattern. For this pattern, we're going to need a measuring tape, some size 8mm or US 11 knitting needles, a double pointed needle that is also 8mm, a tapestry needle, scissors, a crochet hook, scrap yarn, and your super chunky yarn. Today I'm using Lion Brand Hometown USA in Key Largo tweed. I got it on Amazon. There's a link in the description below. Disclaimer, it is an affiliate link. It doesn't cost you anymore. It just gives me a little extra money when you purchase through there. So to start out, we are going to take one of our knitting needles, our scrap yarn, and our crochet hook. We're going to start with a slip knot. And then using a provisional cast on, we are going to cast on 24 stitches. If you'd prefer to not use a provisional cast on, you can use any cast on that you'd like. However, without doing a provisional cast on, you will not be grafting, you'll just be stitching it together later and you will have a seam. If you need help doing a provisional cast on, my video on provisional cast on will be in the description box below, as well as a card up in the top right hand corner. So then once we have our 24 stitches, we'll start the pattern by taking our yarn, any super chunky yarn will really work for this, but I prefer this one. It's very soft. And so our first row is going to be purl 1, knit 2, purl 2, and repeating that knit and purl to the end, and then ending with a purl 1. It's going to create a 2x2 ribbing. So we purl 1, and knit 2, and then purl 2. This is going to be our right side of our pattern. If you'd like written instructions, there is a link in the description box below to a PDF download. And that is our first right side row. It's going to look a little bit longer than it will end up, but as the ribbing will make it less thick. So for the second row, we do knit 1, purl 2, knit 2 to the end of the row, ending on a knit 1. Essentially, we just knit the knits and purl the purls. And this will create our ribbing. And now we will continue those 2 rows, alternating between row 1 and 2 until the piece measures about 11 inches, and you want to end on row 2. So now that we have our piece that's at 11 inches, we are going to put the twist in the front. So to do that, we're starting with a purl on this side. We're going to take our double pointed needle and slip our first 12 stitches onto the needle. You want to slip them purlwise so they don't twist. And once we have all 12 of those stitches on that needle, we're going to hold it in the back of our work, take our knitting needle, and start working on the remaining stitches by going purl 1 first, can be a little tight, but you want to be careful not to twist those stitches in the back. So we're going to purl 1, then knit 2, and purl 2 to the end of that needle, ending on a purl 1. So right here, essentially what we're doing is working half of our row 1 onto these stitches. And once we finish with those 12 stitches, we are going to take our stitches that were on the double pointed needle, bring them back to the front, being careful not to twist them. It can be a little bit tight. You want to make sure you left some slack, but not too much. And we will go in and we will purl the first one from here, and then knit 2, purl 2 to the end of the row, and ending on purl 1. So essentially we've taken half of our stitches and just swap them over. And once we've completed that, we can set our double pointed needle aside. For this project, I'd prefer to use a double pointed needle because you can work from both ends instead of a cable needle. Turn, and then we will continue our same pattern as before, starting with row 2 as we just worked row 1. So we'll knit 1, we'll purl 2, we'll knit 2 to the end of the row, ending on a knit 1. Now the first couple of rows get a little bit tight. It's okay, just go slow, don't pull too hard. And now you want to make sure that the stitches don't get twisted from where they were. It'll show the ugly bump. like this, that's twisted the wrong way. You want to flip over the bottom to make sure that cable cross is still there. And as you can see, it creates the nice little twist and interest in the front. So now we are going to continue rows 1 and 2 until the piece measures about 22 inches. You're going to end on row 1. You want to make sure that you leave enough length that you can graft it or sew it later. Now that our piece measures about 22 inches, we have the whole length done. It's now to finish it off. Now if you did a normal cast on and not a provisional cast on, you would just bind off here and then sew the pieces together. You would end up with a seam. It would look pretty bulky, but you can do it that way. Since I did the provisional cast on, we will be taking that off and then grafting. So we ended with row 1. Make sure that you have about 3 to 4 times the length. A little more is better, the width of the pattern, so that for grafting, if you are grafting. And so now we will be taking off the provisional cast on and putting the stitches back on. You want to make sure that the point is going in for the same direction that the other needle is going to be, so that the points will be together. If you need help with provisional cast on, my video is in the description box below where we go over taking it off as well. Sometimes it can get a little bit twisted. You want to take care not to drop your stitches or twist them. If you do end up twisting your stitches, you can just untwist them as you get to them in the grafting row. It's generally a good idea to use the same weight yarn. I did not because I didn't have any scrap super bulky. But sometimes when you use a thinner weighted yarn for your provisional cast on, your stitches can try to undo and duck below. So just go slowly and take them out one by one and put them back onto your other straight needle. It does take time and it might seem tedious, but in my opinion, the results are worth it when you have an almost seamless headband. And now that the stitches are on, we are going to start grafting. So we are going to take our piece, take both of the needles. You want the wrong sides facing together. So as you can see, the knit is the first stitch on this side, so we want those two together. And you want the rest of the working yarn on the back needle. So we will take our needle, our tapestry needle, and we are going to be setting up for a purl on both sides. So to start, we are going to go in the first stitch as if to knit, leave it on the needle, pull the yarn through, and then in the back, in as if to purl, pull the yarn through. Then we'll be going in as if to purl, slide off, set up for our knit, so we'll go in as if to purl. And then on the back, in as if to knit, slide off, set up for the next knit, in as if to knit. If you need help grafting, I have a video in the description box below. This is the grafting pattern we'll be following. It's the same as row 1. As a 2x2 ribbing. It can be a little tricky, but it's not too difficult when you know how to graft in pattern. So if you need help with that, please visit the other video and I can show you how to graft in pattern. And now you'll continue grafting all the way to the end of the row in the 2x2 ribbing pattern. And as you go, you want to make sure that you tighten your stitches. You want to adjust the gauge of the grafting that you've done, otherwise it can look too loose. Now tighten up the stitches, and as you can see from this little bit, it's already looking almost seamless. There's a little half a stitch jog, but it's not very noticeable, which is why I love grafting things that are circular. So we're going to continue in as if to knit, slide off. We just work our way through grafting. You always want to work the first two stitches and then the back 2 stitches. And you want to adjust your gauge as you go along. You can do this with your needle, or this yarn is thick enough that you can do it with your fingers a little bit. Just going one by one, pulling those grafted stitches to tighten them to blend in with the rest of your stitches. I do also have on my blog the basic written instructions for 2x2 ribbing grafting. That will also be in the description box below. Tightening the stitches can be a little tedious, however, it's more painful to do it at the end rather than as you go, and you could potentially run out of yarn if you don't tighten up your grafting work as you go. So here I'm almost finished. If you look at the previous stitches, you can see that it's very difficult to see the seam. And now we're on the last stitches, so we're just going to go in as if to purl slide off, in as if to knit slide off. Set our knitting needles aside. And now you can see the difference that this is a lot thicker and doesn't look as good as the side that was already tightened. That's why it's important to adjust your gauge. So now we will go in and just tighten up the stitches we grafted. You want to make sure you're very gentle when you tug, and you're very purposeful of where you put your needle. You don't want to accidentally split your yarn, pull, and then you have a very messed up stitch. And so you want to make sure that you're really going and taking your time. And now that we have all the grafting adjusted, we can see it's pretty seamless. Now we just have to weave in our ends, and then we have a completed pattern. Now you can use a duplicate stitch to weave in your ends. I prefer going in the opposite direction, and for this one I'm just going in between the purl stitch and the knit stitches, that one single stitch on the ends, just by a few rows, and then pulling it through. I find that's secure enough, and with this with this weight and pattern of yarn, it really isn't that visible. We'll snip. And then we'll take the starting one and we will go in the opposite direction, and that really helps secure the yarn. And pull it, stretch it out a little bit, and we can see it looks pretty seamless. This is the headband on my head. In the back you can barely tell that there's a seam on there. And this is your completed headband. And that is the pattern. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like and subscribe. If you'd like written instructions on how to do this pattern, I have a link in the description box below to get a PDF download of the pattern. Thank you so much for watching, and happy knitting.